Introducing Zeus. This
Hello.
is Zeus. This is our 9-year-old.
Hound mix.
Hound mix.
He's a hound mix, yes.
He's a hound mix.
Yes.
He's about 45 pounds, although he might have lost a few pounds since we've been to Japan. So, yeah, good boy.
So in April of 2024, we flew from California in the U.S. over to Japan, all the way to Nagasaki, Japan, through Tokyo. And we wanted to take this opportunity to tell everyone exactly how that process went about, because it's a very long and complicated process. And I know when I was doing my research on it, there wasn't everything in one video. I had to watch a video here and a video there. And so we thought we wanted to share that process with everybody. As a quick guideline, to bring your dog, specifically your dog, there are different processes for different animals, into Japan, you're going to have to do a 6-month quarantine, which is not what most people think it is. 2 rabies shots. You're going to have a blood test to confirm antibodies, the antibody levels in your dog. You're going to have to do a 40-day checkup, and then you're going to have to do a 7-day checkup that involves the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and you're going to have to communicate with Japanese animal control at whichever airport it is that you're flying into.
So just a bit of background, Japan is rabies free, which is why they require some of these ahead of time processes and procedures.
Right. And so depending on which state you fly from, the rules can be different. Like Hawaii is rabies free, so the process is different if you're going to be flying from Hawaii. The other thing you're going to need to do is work with your airline. Now for us, we flew with ANA. We really wanted to go with one of the Japan carriers, either ANA or JAL, and in the end we decided to go with ANA strictly because of the flights that they were offering that worked for us. And we're going to talk about the airline, the process with the airlines, the kennel we use, and a few other things. And we just want to let everybody know too, we're not endorsing, this isn't an endorsed video, this is just us. We're telling you what we used and how we went about doing it. Feel free to do your own research. In fact, I highly recommend it. And do what is best for you and your pet when you start this process.
So a little bit of the acronym explanations. JAL, when you say JAL, JAL is Japan Airlines. ANA is the other Japanese airline that we ended up using.
All Nippon Airways.
All Nippon Airways. We ended up using ANA through LAX, even though we're traveling from San Diego, because they had a direct flight to Tokyo Haneda Airport, which also has a direct flight from Haneda to Nagasaki. Had we flown into Narita, we'd have had to find some other way to get from Narita to Haneda in Tokyo. So Tokyo has 2 airports, Narita and Haneda, which involve some sort of transportation in between that may or may not have allowed dogs, although probably a kennel on a bus, a limousine ride, what they call limousines here in Japan, or
we would have had to do private transfer for that.
Yeah.
So the regular limousine bus between the 2 wouldn't have worked, which is one of the reasons why we decided to fly into Haneda.
But we chose ANA for that very reason versus Japan Airlines JAL, going from LAX to Haneda.
So to start the process, the first thing you're going to want to do is read up on the process, not just what we're talking about. You can go to Japan's animal quarantine website. We'll post the link in the comment section so you guys can click on that if you don't know it already. They do have a great section in English that will walk you through kind of the bigger points of the process, but some of the smaller points can be a little confusing sometimes, just knowing how the system works. And once you're familiar with that, then you can actually start the big process, which is the quarantine. Now, most people think of the quarantine as you've got to put your pet in a kennel or boarding facility for 6 months and they have to stay there and they're not interacting with other dogs. And that's not how it works. I should note, though, if you don't do this process right, If you land in Japan and Japanese Animal Control does not accept your paperwork for whatever reason, that is what will happen. They will kennel and crate your dog in quarantine for up to 6 months. So please make sure you follow through, communicate with the Japanese Animal Control authorities. We did many times. They were always very responsive, answered all of our questions in English, so don't worry about the language barrier if you don't speak Japanese, because we don't speak Japanese very well either. So that whole process in English went very smoothly speaking with them. So once you're familiar with the process, you're going to have to find a veterinarian, that will do what's called a FAVN test. And FAVN stands for the fluorescent antibody virus neutralization. And what that does is that measures your dog's rabies antiviral levels. Did I say that right? Antibody levels. Sorry, antibody levels. It's a simple blood test. It's not anything hard on your dog. But one of the hard points about coming from the US is I believe there are only a couple of facilities within the country that do the test. So your vet will do the blood draw, and then they will have to ship it out to the testing facility, which for us, I believe, was Kansas State University. And we will include a copy of what that test looked like, or the certificate, so you can know what to expect when it comes. That starts your 6-month quarantine process.
Oh, they're getting the results back from the university as a 6 months process, or taking the dog to the vet?
It's from the date of the
blood draw?
I believe the test.
Oh, okay.
When they certify that they have the right level of antibodies is when it starts.
Yeah. So just to reiterate, it's plan well ahead, 6 to 7 months before coming to Japan, to avoid the Japan quarantine in kennel time.
Right.
Well ahead of time.
And realize too that the 6 months is the shortest it can be. I think for us the total process took almost 7, and that's okay. You have a total, I believe, and again you're going to want to check this, and I wouldn't plan out this far ahead, but I believe the antibody test, the FAVN test, is good for a total of 2 years. So if for some reason you've got to push your flight back for a couple months, that's not a big deal. You don't have to plan exactly to 6 months to the day for this to work. So just keep that in mind. And by day 40, which we're going to talk about, you're going to need to have your flight ready to go, your tickets. So we came from California, specifically San Diego, and we went with Melrose Veterinary Hospital. Again, we're not endorsing anybody, but those from the San Diego area, if you're looking to come from somewhere, we worked with Lana. She did a great job because she'd already worked with other people on getting their pets to Japan, so she was familiar with the form and she was familiar with the process. If you can find a vet that this is not their first time doing it, it will make the process a lot smoother, because you have to fill out some paperwork and you're going to need the vet's help, and you're going to have to communicate with the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the USDA, for some of the forms as well. So having someone that's familiar with that whole process will be very helpful. So the next part of the process, you're going to be waiting after that 6 months. You're going to be waiting to about day 40. It doesn't have to be exactly day 40. It can be like day 45, day 50. That's okay. I would not do it at day 30 or 35. Do it at day 40 or a few days earlier. What you're going to do is you're going to email Japanese Animal Control at the airport where you're going to be landing, which is one of the international airports. Again, for us, that was Tokyo, Haneda. And you're going to have to send them a form, which is the notification for import of dogs. Again, we'll provide a blank copy. You can see what it looks like. We got it off the forms on the Japanese website. It's a 2-page form, and it asks descriptions on your dog, their rabies, some other characteristics about them. And you're also, what I would recommend sending at that same time, a copy of the FAVN test, the FAVN, and the copies of the rabies certificates. And once you send that, they should get back to you in about 2 or 3 days. And if they approve it, all the paperwork, they will send you an approval of import inspection of animals. And this is kind of like a temporary green light that you can move forward. You're not done yet, so don't stop. There's some very important things you still need to do, but that's a sign saying that all the paperwork they have so far is good to go. And that's really important. And you're going to want to keep several copies of that paperwork to take you further on in this journey. A quick note on page 2 of the notification form, it's going to ask you whether you're going to bring your pet as cargo or hand luggage. Now, when you're flying most of the international carriers, your pet has to fly in the cargo hold with the luggage, okay? I know that sounds scary, and I know it's not ideal for most pet owners, but some things you should know is that the cargo holds are climate controlled, they're pressurized, so your animal is going to be at a comfortable temperature, although it will be dark. So they, at least temperature wise, they will be okay. On the form though, you're going to want to put hand luggage. And what that does is it lets the airport facility know that they send your dog with your actual luggage that you've checked in already. If you do cargo, what it's going to do is it may send it to a different facility within the airport, which will make the process much harder. And we found that out the hard way because we thought, oh, well, they're going with the luggage, so we checked cargo. And fortunately, animal control was very kind and probably realized that we had made a mistake, wrote us back and asked us and said, are you really sending them in as cargo, or are they coming with you with your luggage? Because if you are, you need to check this hand luggage option, which thankfully we did. So that's something you really want to pay attention to. Okay, so here's the next hurdle you're going to have. At 7 days, you need to send a form to Japan that has a stamp from the U.S. Department of Agriculture. We started this process at 10 days before. You need to go to your vet. They do, basically, it's like a fit to fly examination of your dog. The vet's going to look at your dog, say they're healthy, it's okay, it's safe for them to fly. They're going to fill out, again, more paperwork, and they have to send it to the U.S. Department of Agriculture for a stamp. That stamp is critical for entry into Japan. Once you get that back, which should hopefully be about 6 or 7 days before your flight, you're going to want to send all of the paperwork, all that stuff you sent on day 40, I would resend all that along with your new USDA stamped form to the same animal control at the airport you're landing. They will write you back and say you are approved to enter the country. That's your green light. That lets you know that Japan has received all the necessary paperwork and it is okay for you to enter the country. That form is called a Form AC. So it's changed over a couple of years. It used to be, I think, a Form 1 or a Form 2, Form A, or a Form C. Now there's a Form AC. So that's the form you're going to want to use. And when they send you back that approval, you're going to want to hang on to that. Keep all that paperwork together so that you can show that to animal control once you enter the country.
So it's also a good idea to keep multiple copies on your person, on the people you're traveling with. So I had a copy, he had a copy, and we had a copy with the Kennel.
No, we didn't. We wanted to, but we couldn't find a secure way of putting it on there without it being lost. But we did want to do that because we didn't know the process. We thought they might start the inspection without us because we were flying out of LAX at 1 a.m., landing in Japan at 5 a.m. the next day. Japan time, right. And so one of our concerns was, is animal control going to be there at 5 a.m.? Because if you look on the website, their office hours are, I believe it's 8:30 to 5. So I was really concerned. It's like, after this 12-hour flight, is our dog going to have to wait there another 3-4 hours? That's not how it works. So just realize that. So, but we didn't know that at the time. So we wanted to keep a copy of the paper with the Kennel, which we didn't know. We didn't need to, fortunately. So day of the flight.
Just a reminder too, when to fly is also very important. We flew in April because Japan has restrictions upon animals traveling between May and October.
It's the airlines.
It's the airlines.
It's the airlines, yes.
So Japanese airlines, anyway, do not allow animals to fly between May and October. Number one, they don't allow in-cabin animals.
I don't think they allow any in-cabin, unless it's a service dog. Oh.
Okay. So the reason being is the airplane itself is temperature controlled, air pressure controlled, but not necessarily the holding facility between check-in and when they load the animals onto the plane. And they're the last ones to be loaded on the plane. So they could spend some time on the tarmac, which between May and October could be very hot. It may not be hot in the United States, but it gets very hot in Japan.
Yes.
So we actually purposely flew in April for that reason.
So something to think about too. So prep work. Okay, we talked about flight day, but I think we need to step back a little bit. Prep work. Our dog was not kennel trained. He is roughly 40 pounds, 20 kilos, which by Japan standards is considered a large dog. So we were trying to figure out how to get him over. We ended up going, originally we had one of the plastic generic crates, and that's what we had started crate training him on, or kennel training him on. If your animal is not crate or kennel trained yet, start that process at day one. Give your pet a full 6 months to get used to the process of being in there and being in there for long periods of time. I know for some of us that's very difficult, but it's going to be very helpful and lower the stress level for your dog.
So yeah, there are plenty of videos out there for kennel training dogs. We basically did okay, let's start making the kennel a safe place, start feeding. We started feeding him in the kennel, started putting, treats in there, and hay. We actually, I climbed in a couple of times. I hung out with him in there. So like, okay, this isn't so bad. We started leaving him in there when we went on maybe initially a grocery trip. So 15 minutes here, 20 minutes there. Lengthened the time over several days. We built him up to an hour here, a few hours, the next time. We built him up. So he got used to being in the kennel.
We ended up changing crates, though, to an Impact crate. Impact, it's a brand, I believe they're out of Idaho. They are a metal crate, and we went with them for a couple of reasons. One, they had handles. And the airline website says the crate or kennel has to have handles, which the plastic one did not. I don't know that they're used, but it does say it's a requirement. So I was worried we would get all the way to the airport, doesn't have handles, and the airline would say, no, sorry, we can't take your dog.
We've heard of plenty of horror stories where the family gets to the airport and then the airline denies the animal because of the kennel, some issue with the kennel.
Yeah, and that's internationally. We've heard that from a bunch of different airlines, not necessarily what we were going through. Another reason we took it, because it was metal, it was a bit more solid, and we do know that cargo does move and around in flight a little bit, and so we wanted to give him the most protection possible while being in the cargo hold, and we felt that the metal kennel, along with the side rails that we had on there, what they're called flight rails, would give it the most strength. And finally, the last reason, which ended up being the most convenient for us, were wheels. So they sell an accessory where the kennel sits in basically like a flatbed dolly, and it connects to it, and you can roll it. And as anyone knows, when you roll luggage around, it has smaller wheels, sometimes it gets caught. This thing rolled really smoothly. It was super easy to get from the truck, navigate through the parking structure, into the airport, into check-in. We transferred flights, so we had to go from one terminal to another, and then we had to go up to check them in there. This thing did flawlessly, so we were very happy with that Impact crate. Again, not an endorsement, but we really liked how that rolled. We didn't have to jimmy anything, specifically designed for it. It was really easy. And so if you're having, especially something what's called a larger dog, you're gonna want something, because the problem with the luggage carriers at the airport, they're not flat. So they're kind of tilted back, which is going to make it a little uncomfortable for your dog. And depending on the size of the kennel you go with, it may not even fit, period. And there's some places, I think it was LAX, didn't they charge? I think they charge like $8 or $10 to rent the luggage pusher thing. So not in Japan, but in LAX they did. So it was just another reason. We were completely prepared and ready to go with that.
Yeah, so we actually did not travel through the airport with our dog Zeus in the kennel. We actually had him on leash walking through the airport. We actually used the kennel on its wheels as a luggage carrier. We had planned room inside and on top of, because it was nice and flat. So we actually, multiple suitcases and whatnot. We were able to maneuver everything without having to use another cart. Mm-hmm. That was nice.
Yeah. And like we said, we flew ANA, All Nippon Airways. Our two choices for us were ANA or JAL. And I will tell you, the staff at ANA were great to work with. I believe it was the supervisor that checked us in. She was very supportive of us, knew the process, walked the other staff through it. We felt very comfortable with it. And even to the point as once we had checked them in and then we were waiting to get on board the plane, she came to us to let us know that everything was okay. And that really helped put us at ease a little bit. And that's the type of service you get, especially from ANA and JAL. And that was one of the reasons why we wanted to go with them, was for that high level of service. We felt very comfortable that they would treat Zeus, our dog, the way we wanted him to be treated, and they did. It was great. We were very comfortable and very happy with the service we got from ANA. So the check-in process at the airport, again, this is for LAX, LA International Airport in California. We parked, we rolled them in. You have to check, basically, you have to check your dog in the same time you check in your luggage. But it's going to be, it's a multi-tier process. They're going to take some measurements because they have to make sure it fits. They're going to weigh it to make sure it weighs properly. You're going to have to pay a fee. The fee for taking in the kennel is $400, which seems to be kind of the standard. And once we checked him in, the staff put the tags on his on his kennel, and our normal luggage was taken for the flight. Then we had to walk him over to a special TSA checkpoint. They checked the kennel, make sure it was safe to go on board the plane, and then they took him from there in the kennel. So once we started that process of checking him in, we had to put him in the kennel, and he had to stay in the kennel. And so they took him at that special TSA checkpoint. That's where they took him at that point to go onto the plane. So before we flew, we had read some advice that said to kind of limit the food and water that you feed your dog. And so we did. We didn't take it away, but we did limit it. So starting the day before, we gave him like 75% of his food, and then the day of we gave him 50% of his food, and then we still gave him access to water, but it was controlled access. We didn't want him to be all full up and have a full bladder, get to the airport, he's too nervous and stressed out to go do his potty business, and then he wouldn't go, and then he's going to be stuck in a kennel for 14 hours holding it. So we did walk him before the flight. LAX unfortunately does not have a great pet area, especially at the international terminal. It was all concrete. So we walked him. Fortunately, I think he did his business a little bit, so we did feel better about that. But they don't have a great pet area for your pet to go do their business beforehand. And again, they're going to be in the kennel for, if this is a 12-hour flight to Japan, check in 2 hours beforehand, 1 to 2 hours of quarantine. You're looking at 15 to 16 hours in the kennel where they're not going to be able to get out. So, you're going to have to expect that you're going to have some cleanup when you arrive in Japan. And we were very fortunate. We didn't. We were quite surprised. We got him, and we had a dry kennel.
Well, the other reason why having a red-eye flight going across the ocean, an international flight, is because it helps. It's basically you get on the plane and they might give you a snack, but then you're asleep. Everybody sleeps because that's your natural time that you sleep. And it also helped with the jet lag and adapting to the new time zone once we got here.
For us. Now, also for Zeus, our dog, he's normally asleep at, we normally go to bed early. So we were flying during his natural sleep time, his sleep cycle as well. So we were trying to align all the cards right so that he would just hopefully get in the kennel, we'd take off, and he would sleep through most of the flight, which we kind of think is what happened, because he came out pretty good. He was fairly happy once we landed and we got him out of the kennel.
The other thing that we did not do, and everybody's on the assumption that, the animal might be stressed out getting on the plane, going to give him a sedative or tranquilizer. That is a big no-no.
Yeah, you can't do that. Yeah, the animals, you can't sedate them or do anything like that. Apparently, I believe it does something like it lowers their blood pressure, which when you add that to the conditions of the flight, creates a dangerous condition for your pet. So you're going to have to work on that de-stress naturally through training and whatnot before the flight. Okay, you've landed. We made it to Tokyo. Again, we landed at Haneda. We got off the plane, again, with just our carry-on. We went through immigration. You go through immigration first, and that allows you kind of legal entry into the country. Again, this is for Haneda, so I can't speak to Narita. But once you get through immigration, what you're going to do, you're in a central area where you can pick up your baggage. If you look all the way over to your left, against the wall, you'll see a sign that says animal quarantine, animal control. I think that's animal quarantine. And here's a map that they gave us, so you can see where it is. You go over there, you can go over there right away, and he was there. We saw him. We actually, as we were waiting in line at immigration, we saw them wheel him out on the floor over to immigration or to animal control.
So this area, just to give an overall, this area is no photography, no videography is allowed. So we don't have any clips or photos of it. So it's basically a long line for the people to get through immigration. You have certain paperwork to make. Is it the declarations or some? Yeah, there's some paperwork to go through.
But it doesn't have anything to do with him.
No, but because we're in line and we're worried about him. Right. So we have to get through immigration first before we can do anything about him. So.
Right. So once you get through immigration, you turn left, you go over to animal control. Your dog should be there. Ours was. Zeus was there. He was in his kennel. He was great. They had him on the wheels all ready to go. There's another dog there for someone to pick up. So it must have come at another flight. And the animal control officers were right there. I gave them a copy of my paperwork. They asked a couple questions. We then had to go into kind of like a back room, a side room, a way to pull him out of the kennel. They had to do a quick check of him, make sure he appeared healthy. They checked his microchip, which is a critical part of this whole process. We put him back in. They gave us a sheet of paperwork saying he was approved for entry to the country. And that was it. I want to say the whole process took 5 or 10 minutes. It was super easy. We were really concerned. We didn't know what to expect, but they were great. They did a great job with him. They were obviously, they were animal people. They're used to dealing with animals. They did a great job interacting with him. And like I said, the whole process was super easy. No stress at all. The hardest part was just getting him back into the kennel, because you have to put him back in the kennel to go through customs. And customs is where you're doing your declarations that you're bringing stuff to the country, and they can search your luggage and whatnot. Yeah. And so that's what you'll do. After you pick up your pet, you're going to go through customs, and the customs officer will ask you some questions. You'll have your declarations. They may go through your luggage. They may not. That's up to the customs part. And then you're in Japan. You've made it.
So basically, Haneda was really wonderful because we went outside and immediately to the right, there was a nice lawn, grassy area. It was great to let him out and let him walk around, stretch his legs, do his potty business. It was really nice.
Right. So we landed at Terminal 3, and by the time you get past immigration and customs, you're going to be on the second floor. What you're going to want to do if you want to take your dog out to go to the bathroom, you're going to go down to the first floor. There's an elevator, and then you turn to the right, and you're going to see a long grassy hillside area, and you can take your dog to go do their business there. Be prepared to pick up after him if you need to, because it's designated. It's not a designated dog area, but we did see other people using that area, so just you got to be ready to clean up after your dog so it stays clean. But it's a great area to just kind of hang out, let your dog stretch the legs, let them do their business, and probably for you to take a breath too and realize you made it. Now for us, we weren't done. We still had a connecting flight to Nagasaki. That flight was going out of Terminal 2. So we had to get from Terminal 3 to Terminal 2. And we found out, fortunately, there's a shuttle bus that goes between the two. And we didn't know this beforehand, but they do allow pets in a kennel. So you got to put them back in the kennel for this part of the journey. And again, this is where the wheels are really nice. The door to the bus was wide enough we could fit him right on in, and the kennel right on in. In fact, when we went on, I think there were two other, they look like Japanese guys bringing their dogs to the airport as well. They actually helped us. They were very kind and helped us out. And so on the shuttle ride from Terminal 3 to Terminal 2, there were 3 dogs and kennels on the bus. Mm-hmm. Not a problem at all. Mm-hmm. And then we got to Terminal 2, and then we offloaded there and kind of got ready. We were a little early, so we kind of went off to a side area where there weren't that many people, and we could walk him outside the terminal. You can't walk him inside the terminal. Inside the terminal, you have to be in a kennel. But so we could let him stretch his legs. We really wanted him to stay out of the kennel as much as possible, knowing that he had another 2 hours to wait for the flight, plus the 2-hour flight to Nagasaki, and then, however long it was going to take us to pick him up once we landed in Nagasaki. Point for those of you who might be thinking, is there a charge for that that connecting flight? No. Once you pay that $400 on the U.S. side, that is $400 for your pet, is all the way to the final destination. So, and they asked that at the airport when we were checking him in. So just make sure you keep a copy of the receipt and all the paperwork with you. So now that we're at Terminal 2, we had to go check him in again. Again, we were already gone through this process once, which was nice, so we kind of had an idea what to do, but we had to figure out which window to go to. You have to go to window 13 for ANA in Terminal 2 if you're doing a connecting flight. And 13 is the special baggage. It's like oversized, special shapes. It's for the pets as well. And again, the ANA staff there were great. They knew what they were doing, put us at ease knowing that they were taking care of him. They were very, they seemed dog friendly as well. They were happy to see the dog. Smooth process to get him in.
They measured the kennel.
They measured the kennel again. They had to do the whole thing again, but they did it for that part of the flight. And then we got our ticket stubs for him, because so we could collect him in Nagasaki. And then that was it. We had him handed off. They took him right there. They treated him great. And then we just went over and waited for our plane at that point. Then we landed in Nagasaki. Again, wherever you land, if you're going to have a connecting flight somewhere else, depends. We went to the baggage area. We waited for the baggage to come out. Our baggage came out, and then right about the same time was when they brought Zeus out. He came out right with the baggage. He was in great spirits as well. We showed the lady all the paperwork to get through. We went to the gate, we got him outside, and at that point we were able to let him out. And so we finally made it. We made it, well, almost. We were 98% up to our final destination. We still had to get to our friend's house where we were staying at. So if your final destination doesn't involve some kind of transfer flight, you're going to be staying somewhere in Tokyo, you are going to have to find some kind of arrangements to get from the airport to wherever it is you're going, your hotel, Airbnb, wherever it happens to be. And your best bet's probably going to be some kind of private shuttle service, because you can't take them inside the buses with you. You can't take them on the trains with you. So you're going to have to do that research ahead of time, and again, communicate with the people in Japan, whatever company it is you're working with. For those who know Japan, their service is great here, and they will get back to you and they will help you, and they'll tell you if they can or cannot do something. We're almost there. So from the airport to our friend's house was half-hour drive, something like that. I think that's what it was. We ended up renting the largest van we could from Toyota Rent-A-Car. I'd rented from them before when I lived in Japan before, so I kind of knew about it, and it was big enough to hold the kennel that we had. And it was great. We went there, we told them we had a pet, and they said no problem. They put a special sheet down on the back, and they have to stay in the kennel. You put the whole kennel for us, we put them in the van, and we just drove to our final destination and offloaded them, and it was that easy. No problem at all. And I don't even think we paid a special fee.
Oh, okay.
I don't think we did. I could be wrong on that part, but we didn't.
Okay.
So in order to drive in Japan, you're going to need your driver's license, an international driving permit, and your passport, obviously. So, and again, in Japan, it's on the left side of the road, not the right. So at least from the States, it might be a little different.
Yeah.
So the cost. This is not a cheap process.
Yeah.
The initial blood draw FAVN test was about $350. We had the 7-day certificate with the USDA endorsement was about $485, and then we had the $400 to the airline to fly. His ticket basically was that. We had the price of the kennel, which I think the kennel with the wheels was almost $800 at that point too.
Plus whatever office visits that the animal goes to see the vet, they're gonna charge their fee.
Yeah, their office fees, and then you may decide they're gonna recommend potentially additional vaccines depending on what your dog has had and whatnot. And I think we ended up going with one additional vaccine. I can't remember what it was off the top of my head. So I think out the door, I think this whole process cost us over $2,000. So not cheap, and definitely something you want to budget and plan for. So on a final note, if you have any questions on the process, email the Japanese Animal Control at the airport you're going to. I did. We had several questions from, could we bring in dog food? What about his medications? What kind of stuff could we bring in, and what to expect once we got there? And the staff in Japan were great. They answered all of our questions. You remember, there's about depending on the time of year, 17 to 16 hour time difference, depending on whether there's daylight savings time or not. And they always got back to me within 2 or 3 days, always in English. So again, language barrier is not a problem. And they were great about answering all of our questions. So if you're unsure about something after you've read it, feel free to email them. They did, like I said, just a great job of putting us at ease as we were walking through this process. If you have any questions, feel free to kind of drop something in the comments as well. We'll be happy to answer what we can for you. Again, it is quite the process to do this. It's very daunting at first, but as we look back on it, it was not as hard as we thought it was going to be.
It is well worth it to not have to kennel your dog in the country you're going to, because that means time away, extra money to kennel the dog there. The only time we were apart was actually in the flights. Yeah,
and it's probably going to be stressful on your dog as well. So so start this process, be familiar with it. There are other YouTube videos. I watch them, do your research online, but the paperwork that was provided was all good, and I just so. And for those that are curious, it's been a couple weeks now, and Zeus is doing great. He's adjusting to his life here. We had started feeding him the specific type of Costco dog food beforehand. We were able to get it here, so the food transition was super easy. We were able to bring over his Provecto for his flea and tick treatment, and I think we had one other thing we brought with us. But he's doing well. He's adjusted well. He enjoys the longer walks. You know, here in Japan, they don't have large yards, so especially if you're going to be staying at an apartment or whatnot, you'll be walking your dog a lot more, and he's quite happy to go on all the walks he's going on these days. So again, we just wanted to share all this with everybody, because for us, we were really unsure and anxious at the beginning, not knowing exactly how it was going to play out. And we understand that if you're going to be going through that as well, we wanted to share our experience that everything went really smooth. The process that's laid out is really what happens, And there are a lot of resources out there, especially on the Japanese side, to help you walk through this process. So thank you very much, and we hope this helps you. Bye.
Bye.